One thing I always wanted to know when watching movies is how the hell do they make these amazing kind of environments? How do they make these things look so realistic in the background of films, games, all of this stuff? And first time I kind of downloaded Photoshop, it was an aim of mine to be able to kind of recreate this. Now that's where something called matte painting comes in. A technique that's been around for years and going right the way back to just removing some poles that were in front of a house. Matte painting is a great way to bring in these types of different landscapes that you may not be able to capture on set. Now I know what you're thinking, well, AI can surely just do a lot of this for us right now. To be honest, not as much. Yes, AI could make loads of photos and images for us, but ultimately, when you're getting these types of things through from clients, they are very particular parts of images you've got to cut out. You've got to have the flexibility in the project as well to edit and remove stuff as you go along. But also, this is just miles more fun. It's just so much more fun to do. I love doing this. It's creative. It gets you thinking about a lot more photography skills and just concept art type skills as well. Like composition is a big part of all of this. Light and color. All of these things are really great to stretch and exercise by doing a matte painting. Whether you're doing photography or any type of digital art skills, try a matte painting. Great, it will challenge you, it will make you think more about how you go out there and take photos, make you think more about how you compose bits of digital art together as well, because you are drawing from real life. Now to take you through this kind of concept, I'm going to break this up into 3 parts for you and give you 3 different videos going over different areas of how we're going to create this matte painting here of Mordor that I've made. Massive Lord of the Rings fan, and it's a great example of matte painting, but here is an example of Mordor. And really what I was going for when making this is to try and capture a journey through those mountains and into Mordor itself. So as we look at this, if I take away our black cinematic bars that we've got here just to widen the canvas a bit further, project file looks like it goes back in that we start our journey here, and you can see that this composition, I wanted it to wind all the way through and not just be like a mess of mountains, but to kind of show some sort of path through, which is what I was aiming for with these kind of sand dunes that go up through the mountains. Now, a big challenge about doing this compared to other matte paintings is the atmospheric perception is very, very different here. At the back of Mordor is a storm, so we wanted to make sure we've got some red clouds in the background there. We've got some red ambient glow. We've got some storm clouds, but we also want to make sure we're still shining some light through our image, which is where we have up here. So this was a really challenging one to do. Like I said, I'm going to break this project up into 3 different videos for you on this channel here. But if you want to get hold of the whole project file, all of the photos that I've used as well, you can just go across onto my website and you can get the project file from here, and you can practice along with me as well. Whilst this won't be a time lapse of creating it, I'm going to be explaining some of the processes and things that I've done to make this, because I find that's a little bit more useful than just watching me do this as a time lapse and you trying to pause and rewind and work out what the hell am I doing. So this video part 1, we're going to go over how do we find the photos themselves to actually use and put them together. Then we'll have a look at in part 2 blending and pulling all of this together, and then part 3 will just be going over final touches to make it look like a scene. When you download the project file from my website, you will get this template to start off with as well, which I always use because it's a 16:9. It also features the black cinematic bars already in, which is really handy just to flip your scope between what it might look like in a movie versus a game. You've got your black and white values built in, which we'll talk about a bit later on, but equally you've got some perspective guides here. Depending on what you're going to be using, the perspective guides can be really useful just to make sure that everything you're doing is actually lining up with reality here. So for this instance, you can see a perspective. This is more of a room perspective, but actually works quite nicely over the top of this image. What we were using was more of a 1-point perspective just to help identify where I want my horizon line to be. Beyond that as well, if I take all of those off, you've also got some composition guides. So you've got a golden triangle, you've got the golden spiral already built in, and you've got your rule of thirds. So it's a handy little template because all these bits are built in for you, but that will come with the project for you too. So how do we find photos for this? Now this is really hard because often when you're trying to sit down to do a matte painting, it's a blank canvas. And how do you overcome that blank canvas is by going out into the world and drawing inspiration from what already exists around us. Now, I already had an idea that I wanted this to be Mordor, so that already helped me start, and all I had to do was find mountain ranges which resembled Mordor. And the mountain range that I felt resembled this the most was the Dolomites over in Italy. The Dolomite Mountains are really kind of sharp, really peaky. They've got that aggressive look to them, which is what you kind of see in the films and you kind of imagine Mordor to be. So my next step then is to find photo packs, find photo collections of the Dolomites that match. Now, why photo packs? Because there's already some consistency between them. You can download photo packs from different places. I have a couple myself on my website, so if you're into this sort of thing, you can download a ruins pack on there, which is just, again, consistent ruins that you can cut out and put in. We're actually using one of these ruins over here, just snuck in as like a little burial mound on top of this rock. But other places is if you go over into stock websites as well. So personally, I use Envato Elements, and I'll leave a link for that in the description below. But you can see what I've done is I've made a collection here called Mordor. And if I go and view my collection, I've gone through and pre-chosen some photos that I feel are either compositionally interesting or match each other. Often you'll find on these stock websites, the same photographers uploaded 5 or 6 photos from the same shoot, the same location. And this is really good because you can already see that the lighting is pretty even, the white balance, the colors are pretty even. Yes, we could download all of these and do this editing, but the easier it is for us, the more time we save as well, especially if you're working on projects for people. So you can see as I go down this collection here, I'm looking for a mixture of things. I'm looking for foreground, background, and midground. If I pop back over into my project here, and we can just explain each of these elements that we've got. Background, you want to have mountains that are less contrasted, have less detail to them, maybe a little bit more blurry, because you've got to think from atmospheric perception. As we look ourselves at a landscape, our eyes cannot see the details, we cannot pick out the things further in the distance, but also the atmosphere starts to get in the way as well and just muddy things up. We need that to come across into our matte paintings. So I want to try and find nice kind of horizon level mountains that you can see I've got in the background here. But equally, anything that has a sky in it is also a win. Popping back into Envato Elements, you can see that I have some background pieces here. For example, I may pull from the background of this one. I may pull from the background over here as well, and I may pull from the background of this. This photo really shows the atmospheric perception in a really good way because you can see more detailed versions of the rocks here, and then as you move backwards beyond each one, it gets slightly lighter and it also is less detailed. There's less contrast going on in there as well. So whilst I might not use this whole image, I may sort of extract the mountains in the background here and bring them in for the back. I never tend to worry if they're too light or too dark because we can fix that as we go along with this. If I come back into my project file here, and let's take off the effects, and I'll go down into my background area, you can see as I take off the effects that I had in the background of this, this is a very light image. It's very, very light that we've got in here. It's quite bright. So we can always darken down. We can do a lot to change colors. We can do a lot to sort of blend this into the background here. So never worry too much about if it's too bright or not. Next, I'm looking for my midground elements. And to me, the midground in matte paintings is some of the most important part of the composition. Often it's the bit that's going to pull your eye through from the foreground to those mountains in the background. So again, if we analyze this image we've got here, I've got this nice kind of mid-ground rock face where it just curves down here and kind of draws you. It shows the journey coming from this temple mound, which is more in the foreground, right the way down to the back. And then your eyes can continue by following this kind of dirt path up here. So to me, these are my mid-ground elements. And if I go up into my mid-ground, and you'll see if I mute it, it takes away a large chunk of what's drawing your eye across in that image there. I then also have the left ridge mountain, which is one massive mountain that's being used in this point as well. So when I'm looking for my mid-ground images in my stock collections, I'm looking for those compositional elements, something that isn't just a rock in front of you, but something that's got a lot of depth to it, that's going to draw you through that image there. So again, looking at the Dolomites images, there were some really nice ones, and the ones that I ended up using was this photo that you can see here. As it kind of curves on through, we've got these nice lines coming down. And I really like this because I could see and visualize my background within it. And that's a big part about choosing these. You can do your thumbnail sketches and things, but ultimately it comes down to the photos you can kind of find, the photos you can use. So as I pull this back in, this became the center point of my composition. And this is actually what I built out around. So I built out around the journey and then built the background in the back of it, and then added the foreground actually in last. Because if you can nail the mid-ground composition, your eye will happily travel all the way through this, and that's what you want from these types of max paintings there. So you can see as I'm going down this, I'm starting to also think about light. Where is my light source going to be? Now, if I've chosen this as my main image to base everything around, I can automatically look at and see where the light is hitting. Now, yes, there's some light down in this bit here, but the shadows falling across. So my light source is up top, which is now predetermined that on my matte painting here, I'm going to put my light source in that top right corner, have that light hitting where it already is hitting on the image. There's no point fighting it. But now that's allowed me to think about the types of images I choose around this to again find stuff where the light is hitting the correct side. So this mountain here, for example, if we go back to our stock collection, we can find in here. And I've chosen this one because I feel it matches the background. It's obviously matching the styles because it's the same location that it's been shot in, but the light is coming across exactly how I want. So when you're choosing photos for these things, once you've found your centerpiece, so that thing in the middle that's going to draw your eye through, use that to help determine your light and then build out from there. You want to always try and choose photos where the light is already hitting in the correct way for you. Again, it saves less time, automatically looks more believable. Choose photos from the same location. Choosing photos from the same location is going to, again, make things a lot easier. It's going to make things more consistent and, again, believable. That's what you're trying to get from this. This is a fake landscape that's going to sit in the background of footage that is real. The more you can blur that line between reality and fake there and just make it blend perfectly, it's going to be believable to the person watching it. Finally, my foreground then is, to me, my least most important part, because depending on the project, you may not always have a foreground. Your foreground may have already been shot and what you're doing is just producing the back and midground. So for example, our foreground here, where you can see you've got, from this elf, you've got it coming down and going over the top of the burial mound, that may have already been filmed and we're just actually creating the thing that goes behind it. But considering we're practicing and we're doing this from scratch, we want some foreground as well. So I find looking at things like close rocks, ruins, these more detailed pieces that stand out and are singular, work really well. You can put columns in, you can put stuff down the center of your frame just to help frame the eyes in. Ledges is what I tend to use most because, again, you can put anything on top of the ledge and it helps sort of show a journey going through there. If I took this other cinematic one that you can see here, then our foreground is basically this rock face that we've got over to the left here, which helps, again, provide that depth into the image. But then we've got this ledge with the wolves on, which is also foreground. Now again, this might have been the thing that's filmed and you can see a distinct line of the foreground where the forest comes in here. When I was creating this piece, I started with my midground, just about the midground, which was this rock face here. It's big, it's a nice subject, it's something for the eye to look at, and then I build out from around that. But let me know if you like this one and want to see a breakdown of this, or if you want a project file to this one as well, and I'll happily put that up on the website for you. Finally then, we have our sky. Now if we look back at the project here, it's quite a cool sky, but we've already mentioned the challenge. A lot of the time you may just choose one sky, but I tend to blend a lot of sky bits together just to make the clouds more interesting, and again, try and help the composition out. I'm trying to help the composition out a bit here, but I want this middle bit to be my final focal point where I've got this sort of orangey redness to it. What I will have once I've put my VFX back on. But I've got this red orangey glow, which is supposed to, in my eyes, simulate this is where Mount Doom is. This is where we eventually want to end up, but not want to ever go. So this became quite tricky because it was about blending almost a storm with a nice sunny sky. So again, you want to find images that match your horizon nicely with the clouds, but also that have enough interest in the cloudscapes to, again, pull your eye into where you want it to be. So for me, I found this cool one of a storm over the ocean there, and we'll talk more about the blending side in the next one, but essentially to blend this in, if I come down into my sky section, you can see that I did a thumbnail sketch over the sky initially. And that was really just to highlight out where I want my sun to be, where I want my actual sky to be as well, where I want some of these darker clouds. And then as I bring the sky in here, I've got my wider sky going across the entire thing, which has my sun in it, has a bit more of a moody cloudscapes. And then finally I put over the top and I mask in using the cloud brushes, which again, you can download fog, cloud brushes, mist brushes, all from Envato Elements, but you can download those and then use them to brush in the actual storm clouds. So it looks a lot more natural. It looks like you're actually masking in clouds rather than using a soft brush. So add that to your resources list as well, get some good concept art brush packs. And as I take off all of my stuff and bring them back on, you can see I lose my ambient glow there, which was really the select color. And again, that's just to help blend our clouds together, take away some of these blue tones, but we'll talk more about the blending in the next one there. So that brings us to the end of this part, and it's such a crucial one because if you get the wrong photos and when you come to start blending, cutting things out, your composition just doesn't look great or something feels like it's missing. It's the hardest part because it's almost like opening a puzzle box with no image on the front and no pieces inside. You got to go find the pieces and you got to work out the image as you go. And that is the hardest part about this. Now you can use some AI bits to help out. Mostly when doing this, I generally just use the AI as the expander tool. So if I found a sky that I like that I just want to make it slightly wider, I will use the generative expand on that. Likewise with a little bit of blending, sometimes I'll use it to help blend. So for example, I used AI on this mound here just to help blend it in a bit more with the grass and look a bit more natural. These are just tools that I use to speed up my workflow. But ultimately, if somebody comes and says, I want to change that, I want to change this rock out here, for example, then I can happily go in and I can take away that right mountain and replace it with something else without affecting the rest of my image too much. Having that freedom on the project file is what you want and what clients are going to want as well. So I hope that was a cool video for you. It's something a little bit different, but again, I love doing these types of things. I think it really challenges you to think about these crucial skills for digital art and photography, and I encourage all of you to do it. But if you want to get hold of the project file and start practicing along with this, then please do check out the link below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2 when we'll go over how we do some of the blending of this.